So today we'll be taking a look at a scenario where the African Unitarians who lost the Great African War in AdizzPros Wicso in episode 97. Now this war was a war that happened again in AdizzPros Wicso in between episodes 97 and 98, and it was obviously a war in Africa between the Unitarians and the anti-Unitarians, especially Tanzania, which had staged a military operation over in here, which they had claimed was made by the African Unitarians, and with this they have justified a war against them, which ended up being one of the greatest in Africa. But in this video we'll see what would have happened if Tanzania was successful and actually managed to defeat the African Unitarians. So let's waste no time and get straight into this video. Now at first, the beginning of this war is unchanged from Adizz's timeline, as we see the same countries joining the same alliances, and immediately we'll see the African Unitarians starting to invade over into the Tanzanian country, which had just staged the big operation in them. Now because of this, the African Unitarians of course do not get any help from their alliance, as the Unitarians are very anti-war, and because of this they'll have to fight on their own together only with their alliance. But this will be pretty good as they start to do their first advancements into Tanzania. But a couple days after the beginning of the war, we see the first advancements over in here be pushed back by the Tanzanian forces, and Tanzania even starting to do their own pushes into the African Unitarians. Now their main goal is to encircle these lakes over in here, because these are pretty, like, not really water source, because you know it's modern day. Water is a pretty common resource now, not everywhere of course, but it is a pretty common resource. Even then, the lake water is generally a pretty good target to attack here, because I said so. Also, this will lead to the Tanzanians starting to attack over into here, again hoping to encircle this lake, and this will end up being pretty successful for them as they also start to advance over in here, although they are pretty unsuccessful in fully pushing the Unitarians back, as now the Unitarians are also making their push over in here and kind of start to free up a bit of the lake in here. Now granted, the Tanzanians will also do their pushes over in here as they are trying to re-liberate their country and push around into here, again primarily on the coast of these lakes. But this also means that the Unitarians are free to push over into here, which they do, but also again the Tanzanians will manage to fully push them back over here on the direct border between the two. And again, as we already saw, they are making some pushes, some very slight pushes, but pushes nevertheless over into here. Now as for this red country, they will also immediately start to push over into here through this country in here, and also they will start to make a push over into this country, as they are pretty much fighting on all fronts. So their strategy is to send their army on all fronts, and because of this they'll also start to also push into this guy, and they are really starting to spread their army. But they do not really venture out in the Unitarians, as you know their army is already working on a lot right now. And now we see the Libyans also starting to do their move in this war, as they immediately send their armies through the Yellow Union over into here, and they kind of start to take over these lands, and immediately they will take a big chunk of this. And then over here to their two allies over in here, we'll see the orange country going over in here and snagging the capital of the Yellow Union. As for the rest, we see the brown country over in here also going over in here and sweeping over through the rest of the territories. Now the yellow team does fight pretty fiercely, but the brown team also has some pretty good war tactics, which they use to the best of their advantages, and with this they managed to fully take out the yellow country, being the first country in this war to fully fall over. And also now we see that the forces of Libya will start to advance into the Central Union over in here. Now these guys, they used to be allies, keyword used to. Now they are no longer allies, and they kinda got the Egypt treatment. Egypt doesn't really like Libya either. Although they used to be allies, now they have separated and kind of went their own ways. So because of this, they are fighting in this war, and because of this, they will get alarmingly close to their capital, but not before the brown country, wrong color, but not before we see that the brown country will manage to go over in here and start taking a pretty wealthy amount of land over from these guys, and these guys are really not doing well, but now they will manage, kind of with the help of their allies, and manage to push them back a bit. Also the same being here with this brown country, but they are not really that successful considering that they have still lost thousands of kilometers of land over to one, the brown team, two, to Libya, their former ally. Now some pretty fierce fighting will be over here between the brown country and the cyan over in here, the cyan country over in here. Now these countries have previously thrown hands in World War IV between the fascist and the democratic countries. These guys being very democratic across their history, but now they fight once again as they are looking forward towards one, these guys uniting the world, two, these guys want to stop this whole Unitarianist BS that they consider to not be good. So they'll start to advance over in the cyan country, but the cyan country will immediately go ahead and take big advantage of the fact that these guys have to spread their army quite in a few areas, also over here to their Union counterpart. So because of this, they will manage to, well, pretty much destroy them over into these fronts, and well, because of this, the cyan country will be also able to start their own advancements over into this country and going over into their territory, but this is where the front will stop around by now. Now we'll see massive news for the unemployed as we see Egypt joining over into the Pentagon Alliance against Libya. Again, a similar situation as with the Central Union over in here, as these guys had previously been allies, but because of multiple factors they ended up separating, and because of this they were no longer friends, and because of this today they are going to war. Egypt has revenge in their minds over Libya and over all the bad stuff they did to them, from invading them back in the days of World War IV when Libya was fascist and the Egyptians were still a pretty small country just carved up from the old empire, to the days of World War V when they were fighting because of the whole elite stuff. Now these guys are yet again separated and have to fight, as the Libyans also start to do a counteroffensive against the Egyptians, and this time it looks like actually we could see Libya win. Although recently stuff has been going well up north for the entire Pentagon Alliance, with Egypt joining, for the actual Unitarians over in here it hasn't been doing so well, as now we'll see Tanzania manage to fully kick out the Unitarians out of their nation, and we now see that the Tanzanian forces will start to heavily advance over in the Unitarian borders. Now reason, although Unitaria is a very strong country and a very big one, as it is said, the Unitarian countries aren't really known for their war and aggressiveness. So because of this, the Tanzanians, which don't have this issue, in fact they've been very kind of war-ish recently, not really recently, but across their history, as they even like fought countries like the old empire, gold Ethiopia, in many wars. Now we see that the Tanzanians will take big advantage of the entire Unitarian ideology and even decide to call one of their old friends to join this conflict. And now we see that the South Africans will join this conflict on the side of Tanzania and will immediately decide to advance over here into the African Unitarians. Now, although South Africa has had some quite good relations with the Unitarians with the recent false flag operation that Tanzania had done in the African Unitarians. Now the South Africans kind of tend to believe the Tanzanians as they've been some more loyal allies. So because of this, the South Africans will decide that, you know, the African Unitarians have went too far, and thus they will join this war, and immediately they'll go ahead and actually manage to snag the capital of the African Unitarians. And if you know pretty much rule number one of a country, if you don't have your capital, you'll pretty much struggle a lot, and this is exactly what will start to happen over with the Unitarians. And now a memo will be given to the rest of the alliance, being like, try to speedrun the rest of these countries and get immediately to pushing the African Unitarians, because they are now starting to get weakened. And now that's exactly what these countries will start to do, as now the Libyans will immediately go ahead and take big advantage of the Central Union over in here, taking their capital, and with this they decide to use this opportunity, and they will also take big advantage of Egypt, going over through their territory over here in the south like this. And now Egypt is also starting to struggle a bit. And now we see that Egypt is starting to get weakened and Libya starting to get the upper hand, as Libya had mobilized most of their military, as they have pretty much always kind of been this war-ish country. But so far this front will kind of stay stalemated like this, as now them together with their ally over in here will start to push against the Central Union over in here, take their land over into this, take their land over into here, and from here pretty much proceed to totally decimate the Central Union, as the Libyans go ahead and take these parts up here in the north of the Central African Union, and as for the rest it will be taken over by this red country over in here. And now all of these three, which have pretty much formed kind of like a circle in here, will now decide to come over and take out this guy. That's what they'll do, as now we see the country over in here starting to push these guys, and immediately we will see them together with their allies also pushing over into these guys, and now they are really starting to struggle. And also pushing over here from the north are the red team, and they are pretty much totally decimating these guys, and they are pretty much day by day taking a lot of territory, and eventually the brown country will go over in here and with a spearhead take the capital of this country and pretty much force this country into surrender, thus also making them exit this war. And now truly the African Unitarians are starting to lose. Now we'll see over that the next step that these guys will take will be to pretty much also destroy the Lavender country, as now these forces together with the Libyans will go over into here and start to push into the Lavender country, again a very old country that they have previously fought against in the days of World War IV, in the days of World War V. And now these guys are starting to also die off, as the red country is also getting their revenge over these guys, as they have previously kind of been betrayed by them with the whole Unitarianist thingy. And because of this, when they get over to these lands, the Lavender country, not wanting to lose any more land, will kind of be like, yeah, whatever, we will surrender and we'll give you military access, just please let us leave, we just don't want to die. And this would be great news, because this means that there's only one country left in this war, and this is none other than the African Unitarians. And immediately when this starts, we'll see the red team finally break through the front lines with the African Unitarians, starting to push over into these territories, and immediately using the military access that the Lavender country has granted them, they'll start to also push through this and having a very good day pretty much totally decimating the African Unitarians, as also their people are now openly revolting against Unitarianism, as this whole thingy with ideology has very badly failed in their country, in their continent, and because of this we'll see that pretty much Africa Unitaria will end, and we see this entire part falling in the matter of months, as now we even see Tanzania starting to do huge sweeps across the territory of the African Unitarians, even having success in conquering over these two lakes, and then they go over here and proceed to advance over the territories of the old kind of pink nation that was over in this region. And because of this, well, Africa Unitaria will be left with no choice than pretty much to accept their fate, as now we see also the Tanzanians pretty much achieving their goal. They'll go ahead and they will take all of this land, and now the African Unitarians are about to fully fall, as also the South Africans come over through here and will manage to take the entire territory where the two old countries in here, the blue and orange countries, were. And for the final blows, we'll see Tanzania coming over in here and get their final territories from this war from here. And over here we'll see also the final split take place, as we see the red armies coming here from the north and take this, while the rest will surrender over to South Africa. Now this marks the end of this war, and this marks the loss of the African Unitarians in this conflict, and with this the anti-Unitarianists have won this war after a lot of brutal fighting. Now a very key difference from the actual timeline is that the Alternates never invaded the anti-Unitarians, so this is definitely one of the reasons why they won. But now we can take a look at the peace treaty. Well, this is the peace treaty, and now going ahead and talking a bit about it. First of all, we see that Libya becomes very big. They take the entire pink part of the Yellow Union, take the north of the Central Union, and take also the north of Egypt. So with this they become very big and take a lot of northern territories for some reason. The Yellow Union has been destroyed, as they have also lost territory to the orange and brown countries. And also going over to the brown country, we see them taking a bit of territory from the Central Union, and also the other Central Union over in here, the Cyan Union over in here, which gets totally decimated. As for the rest of the Central Union, we see the old green country that was part of it break away and also take a bit of territory from these guys, which become very small, as they have also lost a considerable amount of territory to the red country. The red country has again taken territory from these guys, plus only one province from the lavender country. The lavender country being pretty much spared thanks to the fact that no one was really interested in their territories and no one else really could take territories beside the red country. So because of this they get also excused because of their military access. And finally the African Unitarians no longer exist. Tanzania takes over the entirety of the old pink nation, and the South Africans take the two nations that I talked about earlier, plus territory from the Namibian nation. And finally we see Africa Unitaria being dissolved, with the three nations becoming independent again and the union being broken apart. And that will do it for this war and this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.